Hello. Thank you for watching this video where you'll learn how to play my game, One of Us Dies Tonight. This is a simple phase-based tabletop role-playing game that requires zero prep. Doesn't require a game master, and anyone can learn to play it on the spot. This video will explain things step by step. I will also narrate a quick example of the game as we proceed. This game draws on classic horror movie tropes and themes, and it's guaranteed to end in death. It's important everyone communicates and use safety tools when playing this game. Since it's designed to evoke tension, fear, and anxiety, it may not be for everyone. In order to get started, we choose our roles. One player becomes the monster and the others become survivors. Anyone can play the monster. All it takes is having an idea. So, to start us off, I'm going to present a scene. Two characters, Jesse and James, book a weekend cabin by the lake. But a sudden rainstorm has kept them trapped inside. A strange sound outside their door, like someone gently trying to test the doorknob. Then the survivors get their chance to provide details about their character and give their input. Who are they? What is their relationship? Maybe the two are on a romantic weekend getaway. We'll then give the survivors stats. We can allocate a 1, 2, and 3 in any order to brawn, brains, and bravery. For Jessie, we'll give her a 3 in brain, a 2 in bravery, and a 1 in brawn. And we'll pretty much do the reverse for James. A 3 in brawn, a 2 in bravery, and a 1 in brains. These numbers let us know how many dice we get to roll when we use these stats. Survivors will also need to keep track of how many wounds they have. Once a survivor reaches 7 wounds, they are dead. When the game starts, I recommend beginning in media res. The survivors immediately take action during the survivor phase, so we'll begin where we left off, with Jesse and James deciding how they will react. Jesse says she's a little worried about someone being at the door, so she tells James to search the room for some kind of weapon. Since search uses brawn or bravery, James can use his brawn to quickly scour the room. He has 3 brawn, so he gets to roll 3d6. Jessie is a little scared, but wants to make sure James succeeds. So she'll take the help action, which will let him roll an additional d6, for a total of 4d6 to search for an item. Whenever any survivor takes an action, they add 1 tension to the monster pool. So we've just added 2 to our total tension. Then we roll the dice. Based on our rolls, we got a 2, a 3, a 5, and a 6. To see if we succeed, we refer to our chart. Every dice roll of a 5 or a 6 counts as a success. So with 2 successes, that is a complete success. So our survivors get to decide what items they find, but try to stick with the reality of the scene. James describes how he picks up a fire poker from next to the fireplace, and he gets to add a d6 to any checks he makes when using that fire poker for the rest of the game. Since the monster starts the game with 8 tension, the monster has accumulated 10 tension total while waiting. So we're going to spend 1 tension to interrupt the survivor's phase and begin the monster phase. At this point, the monster player describes how the monster suddenly appears, interrupting the scene. Jesse and James hear the rattling at the door grow louder. Then there's a deafening crash as the door bursts open, revealing the outline of a shadowy figure. I'm going to spend 2 tension on both Jesse and James to try to frighten each of them. So far, we've spent a total of 5 tension, and Jesse and James must both roll bravery to succeed. Since they each have 2 bravery, they each get to roll 2d6. Jesse gets a 4 and a 6, but James gets a 1 and a 2. It means James has completely failed. Instead of adding 3 tensions to the pool, he rolls a d6 and takes that many wounds. Since James rolled a 6, that means he has 6 wounds out of 7. He is on death's door. Jessie had a partial success, which means she only takes 1 wound, but manages to avoid most of the damage. When the monster roars, Jessie is too afraid and stumbles back into the fireplace, burning himself badly. As Jessie pulls him out of it, the monster quickly runs across the room. Not a man, not a spirit, but something more. It then tries to harm Jesse to end him once and for all. Jesse has 3 brawn, and he has his fire poker to defend himself. So he rolls 4d6 and manages to roll a 5 and a 6, avoiding all the damage. At this point, we've spent 7 tension and have 3 left. We're going to spend 2 to isolate the survivors and narratively describe how we separate them from each other. As Jesse and James try to get away from the killer, they run down the hall, and the killer picks up their machete, throwing it across the hall towards them. Jesse and James push each other apart, going down separate halls in order to avoid the killer. But now, each of them are alone, and the monster fades back into darkness. It is once again the survivors' turn. The tension has dropped down for a moment. They each have a moment to breathe. Do they dare search for each other again? Or does James try to stop to tend to his wounds first? Does Jesse try to search for a safer place to hide? How the story ends is ultimately dependent on the choices of the survivors and the monster. But one thing's for sure. It ends with one of us dying tonight. When all the survivors are dead or the monster is defeated, the game ends. It's best to think of your game in a horror movie tropes. Is this a slasher film, killer clown movie, some sort of supernatural thriller? Maybe your monster is a giant praying mantis looking for a place to lay its eggs. Maybe your monster is a werewolf hunting in the woods that has come across a campsite. Monsters should try to build up tension so they can use their phase to be as scary as possible, and then shift back into the shadows. This is a narrative-focused game where the point is to tell a fun horror story, not to torture your friends and describe how you're harming them. So be sure to discuss what kind of game you're trying to play when you get started, and what kind of horror you might be in the mood for. The best part about this game is that once someone's had their turn as the monster, someone else might have an idea and decide they want to try too. Anyone can pitch a scenario, and anyone can be the monster. I hope this facilitates many fun games for our horror fans out there and helps introduce many people to TTRPGs that are easy to learn and fun to play. Let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everybody.